נשמע אסכול חי, תברך את שמך, השם השם אלוהינו. די 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 די. איי 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 איי. איי 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 איי. איי איי איי. Afternoon. We're back with Soul Food, our weekly lunch and learn. We're with the Ramchal, and we finished off last time. It was a long time ago, with the Ramchal in his chapter Chovat Adam Be'olamo, the man's duty in the world. And so we're going to learn a little bit of the Ramchal. And in order to move forward, we have to go back a little bit to get a sense of where the Ramchal was at last we saw him. Unless we were with the learning, the Ramchal had begun with a general overview of what our obligation as human beings is in the world, what it is that we're here to do. And as we discussed last time we were together, we discussed the notion that Olam Hazeh Domeh Lefro's door, that we are in this sacred incarnation. We've taken birth, to use the language from the world of the East. We've taken a sacred incarnation in order to do the work of perfecting the soul, in order to do the work of tikkun nefesh. And the way that the rabbis, the way that our wisdom masters, our sages, the way that they language that is that we are here in this world in order to achieve, to use this world in order to finish our own unique soul work. And that soul work happens through the instrumental practices, meditations, prayers, good deeds that we do in this world. That's what brings our tikkun. And so the Ramchal says on page 20, that the world has been created, and human beings are the pinnacle of that evolution, of that creation. We can use the world for good or for not good. If we are drawn after the world, and here the Ramchal means that if we get caught up in the illusions of the physical material world, meaning, I want to say this, probably for the Ramchal meant being overly connected to the physical world, where he was an ascetic, and so the physical world as being somewhat dangerous. But maybe we would say it differently. We would say, if you, me, if any of us, if we get taken away by the world, thinking that the world is all there is, meaning all there is just this physical dimension of reality, material reality. Even someone like Sam Harris, or some radical scientist, like materialistic scientist, would acknowledge that there is a thing called consciousness. And if we become so separated from a sense of meaning and purpose, a sense of interiority, that we live in a world of surfaces, then we're mitrachakim miboreinu. We are now distant from our Creator. You damage yourself and damage the world. But inu sholed b'atzmo v'nidbak b'boro, u'mishtamesh min ha'olam rach liyot lo l'si'ur l'avodat boro, hu mit'aleh v'olam atzmo mit'aleh imo. But he says, if you use the world, if you have self-control, self-mastery, and you remain attached to the root of your soul, to who you really are, to the truth of your own integrity, the truth of your own your own purpose, your own meaning. And then you see the world as a means to some degree. The world is here. You're in this world in order to aid you, to assist you in coming closer to your purpose. You elevate yourself and you elevate the world, says the Ramchal. Kinei Ilui gadol hu labriot kulam biotam misham she'adam hashalem hamukdash b'kedushat yitbarach b'kedushato yitbarach. והוא כעניין מה שאמרו חכמינו זיכרונם לברכה בעניין האור שגנזו הקדוש ברוך הוא לצדיקים וזו לשונם, כיוון שראה הקדוש ברוך הוא אור שגנזו לצדיקים שמח, שנאמר אור צדיקים ישמח. Ramchal brings a number of proofs to show that if we use the world for the sake of this higher, more elevated purpose, meaning to evolve consciousness, to bring about a greater world of compassion and self-transcendence and translucence, transparency before the source of life, the source of love. And we don't use the world as masks or as thick, egoic shields, right? Then the Ramchal says, then the whole world wants to serve that purpose. And he says it's kind of a wonderful image. He says that the Midrash, the rabbinic lore, says that when Jacob wanted to lie down, the stones that he was about to place beneath his head, each one was vying to say, I want to be the stone that the tzaddik, the righteous one, places his head on. Or we might say, the world is to some degree, the Ramchal is imputing some kind of consciousness to the world. The world is, as it were, smiles when we use it, where we participate in the world's own evolution for the sake of the evolution of the species and of the planet of the universe. There's some consciousness of the world where the world would prefer to be used for that than for evil, and that the world knows that. Right now, again, without getting into the Ramchal's own theology or his own philosophy, or whether or not it aligns with our own, we can find language for this to say that there is, as Martin Luther King said, the arc of history is inclining or bends towards justice. We could say the inner intelligence of the world is inclining towards expansion and towards love, right? Towards love, and that when we use the world or we engage the world through love, then the world is made that much better, or that much more aligned with its own purpose. Just trying to think out loud with you all. Just trying to think out loud with all of you. In the rabbinic wisdom teachings, the clothing that you put tzitzit on, the clothing that have the fringes, the religious fringes, that's the evolution of clothing, as it were. It's like the highest brand, like the GQish of GQish, or the most refined clothing is clothing that is transparently being used for the sake of love. And in a way, it's kind of like imagining that the dishes that we the Shabbat dishes, as it were, they were made for this purpose. I sometimes think that, and it's very personal with all of you. I wish I could see your faces. Only 9 of you here. You could be in my living room, but sometimes after I became an Abba, after I became a father, I remember walking in places to show my sons where places that I'd walked around here in New York, taking them to the restaurants that I used to be a waiter in, or taking them up and down the blocks where I was spending my 20s searching for God in all the right places, all the wrong places. And I walk by a place and I think that my whole life was leading me to this moment to walk with my boys here. And that every detour that I had was really a destination that was waiting for them, for me to show them. And I sometimes feel that the Ramchal is trying to say that there are, that the world, in his own perspective, the world is God, is love. And that the whole world, as it were, right, the whole world, all of conscious life, as the Talmud says, there's a little angel that hits every blade of grass and says, grow, grow, gedel, gedel. And all of conscious life is awaiting that tzaddik, that bodhisattva, that righteous awareness of human consciousness that can help the planet rise. Even though, of course, there's so much sentience in the quote-unquote inanimate world, or in the animal kingdom, in the animal world, human beings have been endowed with a unique level of consciousness. We are the only ones that can set up hospitals. And we are also the ones that create massive destruction with our consciousness. And the Ramchal is trying to say we live in a world where both of those options are available to us. At any given moment, the choices that we make can either create a world or destroy it. And that's a tremendous responsibility that we can't shirk. We can't ignore it. Doesn't mean that it has to become heavy, but there's the yoga of life is choosing to breathe into tightness, into constriction, into places of narrowness, to bring awareness, to bring courage, to bring presence, or to go in the opposite direction. And it's a spectrum. Any given moment we might fall, and then we rise back up again. I was talking to a friend of mine, colleague, actually not a colleague, a friend of mine, but I've worked with him, but he's a friend who called me yesterday to let me know that he has his cancer came back. I'm also one that reminds me that this learning should be for the healing of all those who need healing, and in particular Gedalia ben Penina. And he's someone who's done a lot of work in his life, and he said to me, David, this is where the rubber will meet the road, will hit the road. This is where all of my life's practices, all of the things that I've done to grow and to evolve and to deepen my humanity, this is where I'm going to find out what I'm made of. This is where it's going to be happening. So I'm very attuned to this choice that we have, every breath, every moment, to label the moment with praise, lachat, tehillah, Adonai yidaber pi, to praise the Creator, to praise life for breath and for presence and for goodness, or not. It's really what it is to be a human being. So the Ramchal says this is where we are. This is the world of choice. And then if you're with me on page 20, I'm moving to the last, there's one long paragraph. So at the end of that long paragraph, it says in the English, our sages of blessed memory drew our attention to this principle in Midrash Kohelet, right? Shamru zeleshonam re'et maseh Elohim v'gomer בשעה שברא הקדוש ברוך הוא את האדם הראשון נטלו והחזירו על כל אילני גן עדן ואמר לו ראה מעשיי כמה נעים ומשובחים הם חומה שבראתי בשבילך בראתי תן דעתך שלא תקלקל ותחריב את עולמי. See the work of God. When the Blessed Holy One created Adam, he took him and caused him to pass before all the trees of the Garden of Eden. He said to him, see how beautiful and praiseworthy are my works, and all that I've created for your sake. Take heed that you do not damage and destroy my world. So said the Ramchal, this beautiful midrash, this beautiful rabbinic teaching that God creates a good world. It isn't full of original sin. It is original blessing, as Matthew Fox once wrote a book called Original Blessing. We in the Jewish tradition believe in original goodness. We are born into a world that is full of beautiful trees and oceans. And God says, I've created the world for you, meaning you are the pinnacle of creation. You are the one that has evolved. Lucky are you, human, who has consciousness and awareness, and that you have evolved. And you have included all of creation within you. Right? Use the world appropriately. but don't destroy the world, or don't destroy your own world. Klalo shel davar, Adam lo nivra ba'avur matzavo b'olam hazeh, ela ba'avur matzavo b'olam haba. אלה שמצבו בעולם הזה הוא אמצעי למצבו בעולם הבא, שהוא תכליתי, על כן תמסר מאמריך חכמינו ז"ל, excuse me, רבים כולם בסגנון אחד מדמים מהעולם הזה למקום וזמן הכנה, והעולם הבא למקום המנוחה ואכילת המוכן כבר. He says you'll see many rabbinic statements that compare this world to the world to come, and the world to come as the place where we will enjoy what is ready for us, but that this world is a world in which to do the work. The world, this world can be compared to an antechamber or some corridor. Another rabbinic statement says, today we do the mitzvot and we receive the reward for them tomorrow. If you work on Erev Shabbat, if you toil, then you'll have something to eat on Shabbat. All of these are wonderful images the Ramchal uses to give us a sense, right? Quoting Kohelet Rabbah, Olam hazeh doma leyavashav, Olam haba leyam, and so on. That there is a strong rabbinic tradition that there is another world, and it comes temporarily after this world. And so this world is the world in which we do the work. And the next world is the world in which we receive the reward. Of course, that's not the only approach, as we've been discussing in the first 6 sessions. Right? There is a Hasidic or a more mystical approach that says that this world and the next world are happening in this time frame, as it were. And that the timeless, the sense of being prepared to receive the reward of the timeless is the work that we do to make our egos and our bodies and our souls transparent and our hearts wide open. So there is a very strong rabbinic tradition that this is the world in which we want to do the work, right? You can't do any work when you're not here. How precious it is to be alive and to be able to maximize our time here and not to waste it. And then the Ramchal on page 22 is going to go on a journey into proving to anyone who's a reasonable individual that this world can't be all that there is. You know, it can't just end with this world. We don't know. He says, it's impossible for anybody who's a rational, reasoning person you can't really think that the purpose of your existence is for this in this world. What is our life in this world? What is the nature of living in this world? Is that it? Don't we all have, to some degree, metaphysical blues? Or is this it? Is this all there is? Says the Ramchal. Is there really someone who's fully happy and fully tranquil in this world? He quotes the 90th Psalm. Our years are 70 in number, if we're lucky, 80, with strength 80. And their persistence is but labor and foolishness. I mean, Rabam Amal va'aven, Kama minetzar v'chalaim u'machovim u'tradot, v'achar kol zot hamavet. Echad mini elev lo yimatzei, she'yarbed ha'olam lo hanachot v'shalva mitit. וגם הוא, אילו יגיע ל100 שנה כבר עבר ובטל מן העולם. Says, 1 in 1,000. Right? We live our lives with suffering, with pain, with struggle, and after all of that, death. I mean, this is a classic existential question, obviously. The problem of death, the problem of life itself, and the pain of life. And Ramchal says that I have an answer to this, and this is an answer that has been given from before the time of the Ramchal. Right? This world is full of suffering. It isn't the ultimate world. It isn't the final place. It isn't where we will, ultimately rest. So says the Ramchal, that's also my perspective, right? No one can imagine that this world, if there was a good God, would be the world that God would give us. That's his assumption. אלא שאם תכלית בריאת האדם היה לצורך העולם הזה, לא היה צריך מדי זה שתנופח בו נשמה כל כך חשובה ועליונה שתהיה גדולה יותר מן המלאכים עצמם, כל שכן שהיא אינה מוצאה שום נחת רוח בכל עינוגי זה העולם. He says, it's not just that argument, that we suffer and it can't be that the suffering is all there is. He says, why would you be given under the hood of your body the neshama of a Ferrari to live in a world which is a world for like, Ford Mustang. I don't know, well, Ford Mustang is a good car, but maybe a Dodge Durango, I don't know, or I don't know, I hope nobody has that car, a Taurus. We always have planets or constellations, Taurus or Saturn. It says, we have a neshama, we have a soul, we have consciousness that is so evolved. This world doesn't exactly meet its needs. To some degree, we human beings yearn for transcendence that to some degree this world provides, but we are always leaving slightly dissatisfied. We always have the metaphysical blues. Even forget about the suffering. Even if we didn't have any suffering, even if we were living in a world like the prince Siddhartha and his father, the king, wanted to shield Siddhartha from all of the pain of the world and said, "You're not going to have to. There won't be any." Let's imagine that you would not have to see any of the pain and suffering and the sickness and the old age. It says that myth, that origin story of the Buddha, there was something in the Buddha that wanted enlightenment, that yearned for transcendence, that yearned for the nibbana, the extinguishing of desire and rebirth. He wanted something me'aver, beyond. And we have it in us. We yearn for moments of transcendence. I mean, one could easily make the argument that almost every sublime activity that human beings engage in, whether it's sports or drama, of theater or music, is a yearning for the olam haba, for that world of complete bliss, a bliss world. It's maybe even kind of the reductionist theories of Freud that all religion is a yearning to go back to the mother, is his confusion of pre and trans, that there is a pre-bliss, a pre-egoic bliss, that is the child in the womb, union with the mother, union with the environment, but there's a trans egoic bliss, right, that we yearn for when we graduate from egoic consciousness. But the Ramchal says that in this world, you only get a glimpse of that. And the world to come is a world of kulo Shabbat, of all Shabbat, right? So this world for the Ramchal must be a preparation for that egoless and bodiless bliss state, says the Ramchal. It says, if you fast forward on page 23, on the bottom of page 22, Mashal Madavar Domed Ironish and Asabat Malchim. He says, he quotes this beautiful midrash from Kohelet Rabbah, that to what can the soul be compared to? The soul can be compared to a bat malachim, a daughter of a princess, who marries a city dweller. And if the city dweller were to bring him, Yavila kol masha ba'olam, if the city dweller brought her everything in his world, inam chashuvim la klum, she's the king's daughter. I mean, what are you going to bring her? You know, what are you going to bring the queen's daughter, the king's daughter? She has everything she needs. Meaning, or she's had everything she needs. She knows what it tastes like in the world of the king. So this world is just insignificant. I tell you personally that when I was in my late teens, in my early 20s, I had such intense mystical experiences with God, with Hashem, and in yeshiva and davening. I was so blissed out from 18 to 24, 25, 23, 24, that when I then spent 10 years away from Yiddishkeit, wondering what I was going to do with myself, those intense experiences like the Bat Melachim were so much deeper, so much more profound than the experiences that I was being offered out there in the world, that it was very hard to reconcile how I was going to move forward, because I just kept thinking about what happened in the Heichal HaMelech in the king's palace. Like, what would possibly come close to the Dveikut, the union that I experienced on Yom Kippur in 1988 in BMT, and then Chaim Berlin. And whenever I would have an experience, I kept thinking, okay, that's nice, but I was walking with Hashem. I felt so, united with Hashem, with God. So I think that the neshama, the soul that we have, our soul is royal, and it won't settle. It won't settle. Kacha nefesh, ilu heveit Allah, kol madanei olam, einam klum la'alama, shehi min ha'elyonim, chen amru rabbeinu zichronam lebracha, al korchecha tanotzav, al korchecha tanolad, ki ein haneshama ohevet olam hazeh chlal, ela adarabba mueset bo. He says the soul doesn't really enjoy this world, so to speak. It even despises it. Very strong language. I don't know if I would agree with that, but I do think that the soul can feel like it's in its own Mitzrayim, its own narrow place, if it's only being fed narrowness. Im kein vaday lo haya borei borei bach bria letachlit shehi neged chokav v'nim'as mimena. Says it's not possible for God, as a loving God, to create a human being or create a creation, to fashion a creation in such a way that its own purpose could not be met, that its own inner integrity, its own inner nature would militate against what this world could provide. To create within us a hunger that is so deep, and then create a world where we can't fill that hunger is very cruel, and it's not possible, says the Ramchal. There must be another level at which the soul is met and fed. So he says that our creation was in order to achieve enlightenment. And for that reason, we have that with this lofty and beautiful neshama. So on page 24, man was created then for the sake of his station in the world to come. Now read the world to come in any way you'd like. Continue to read that throughout the book, but I will read it as enlightenment, or the state of overcoming, of being nourished by the world of the soul. Therefore, the soul was placed in me, in you, for it befits the soul to serve God. We want to serve God. Now, I don't care if you're an atheist or an agnostic. It doesn't matter to me. I really don't feel the need to defend God. It doesn't bother me if somebody says they don't believe in God. It doesn't bother. We just use different words for different things. If a person says I don't believe in a creator God, wonderful. You might be more enlightened than I am. You might be more enlightened. The soul was created to serve love, to serve the greatest imaginable, right? The greatest imaginable consciousness that there is. Call that consciousness awareness. Call it Allah. Call it God. Call it Yah. Call it your higher self. Call it whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. A rose by the end of the name is still as sweet. So the soul wants to serve, to be aligned, to be logged on to that greatest imaginable, the deepest, greatest witness that is the great witness, the great self, the Ani Shebe Ani, the Anochi Shebe Anochi, the I of the I, that is beyond form, but not, right? Beyond formless, beyond form, beyond, but also nesting here in heavens and earth. So that presence is what we want to serve. We want to be aligned in that. We want our world, our life to be not only meaningful because of what we acquire, but also about what we give. Not what we get, but what we give. So we want to give. We want to give. And we want to be aligned in this world through the Ramchal says we want to do practices that help us manifest that giving purpose. V'inei, אחר שידענו זה, נבין מיד חומר המצוות, אשר עלינו בעיקר העבודה אשר בידינו, כי הנה אלה הם הנמצאים מביאים אותנו אל שלמות האמיתי, אשר בלעדם לא יושג כלל. ואולם ידוע כי אין התכלית מגיע אלא מכוח קיבוץ כל האמצעים אשר נמצאו אשר שימשו להגיעו. I'm going to break this down in a minute. Man, I really want to say that I never realized how important it was to study to be a good parent. I want to think about all the things that I've studied in my life so far to see what I've devoted time and energy to master. I became a very, very, very accomplished hockey player. I became a very accomplished learner of Torah and texts in yeshiva, spent hours poring over texts. I've spent hours davening. I've spent many hours meditating, many hours doing martial arts and healing practices, of many hours reading. When it came to parenting, I had no experience, and I never went to a coach. I never had a coach to teach me how to parent. I guarantee you that very few parents have. And the most amazing thing is that it's a skill, right? It's a skill that you think you can learn on the job, but the problem with that is that it's like trying to become a great pianist without someone teaching you. You might have great skill at it, or you might have seen someone playing piano in your home, but very, very rare is someone who can pick it up without coaching. Singing. I've spent hours learning how to sing. And when it comes to spirituality, we assume that spirituality is like nostalgia, listening to like Light FM or, Hallmark cards. But spirituality is a skill. Spirituality is, the work of becoming more and more transparent and dropping our egos is avodah. It is work. And that's what the Ramchal wants us to know. And the work that we do in this world will bear fruits, both in this world and also in the world of souls, in the world of spirit. So I think we're going to stop here. I know some people just joined us. But even though it says it's an hour-long study session from 1 to 2, we're going to change that because the last, I think, 3 or 4 have been a half hour. We just figured that it would be easier for people to have a half-hour session at lunchtime than an hour-long session. If that isn't true, right? This isn't a broadcast that goes out to 1 million people. It looks like there are 11 people now. I think we're averaging about 75 to 100 people who are watching this after the class. So if this is something you're watching and you would like for me to do 45 minutes, I'd love to hear a consensus on that. If I don't hear from anyone, I'm just going to continue to do half-hour pieces. We're going to pick up, God willing, next week with this paragraph again. On page 24, we're going to talk about the importance of spiritual practice again, and how important it is to set up regularity. And we'll begin probably in 2 weeks with chapter 2, Bebeur Midata Zihirut. We'll talk about Zihirut, about being careful, having watchfulness. I'm going to wish all of you an amazing day, and I want to bless you and me with hearing the words of the Ramchal today, that our neshama, our soul, is the daughter of royalty. That each and every one of us has a regal soul that isn't satisfied with what the city dweller, so to speak, that we married in the body wants. The body gives us all kinds of wonderful things, but the soul in us wants more than just good food and more than just, comfort. But more than that, the soul wants transcendence. The soul yearns for those heights. So God should bless us with being able to hear the needs of the soul today and this week. And I wish you all a wonderful day. Many blessings to you. Bye-bye.